What's going on, everybody? We got another Brian Flores update that we're going to be diving into on today's edition of Vikings Now by Chat Sports. And then with it looking like Brian Flores will most likely be out of the door as the Vikings defensive coordinator, I do want to go over 5 replacements if he does end up leaving. I actually think the most likely replacement for Flores, if he does end up leaving, is already in the Vikings organization. So we'll discuss who that is and why he makes a lot of sense coming up here in just a second. But I do quickly want to say thank you to all of you guys who have hit that subscribe button over the last couple of weeks. We did just cross over 69,000 subscribers. So shout out to all the real ones. We are just nearing 100K subs. I cannot wait. 31,000 subscribers away from that milestone. So if you guys are new here and have not watched the channel yet, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Give us a chance. We post multiple videos per day around your Minnesota Vikings. So if you guys just want more Vikings content, throughout your day, throughout this offseason, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Any updates, any news, rumors, whatever it may be, we'll keep you guys posted with it all. So hit that subscribe button today. All right, so some more bad news around Brian Flores that we'll start off talking about first. The Pittsburgh Steelers have officially requested a head coach interview with Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores. Per sources, Flores is in Washington today. This was tweeted out yesterday on Wednesday, January 14th, where he was interviewing for the Commanders' defensive coordinator job. Head coach interview is expected next with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Flores, a lot to unpack here, because if you had to go look on DraftKings, Flores, as it stands currently, is the favorite to land the Las Vegas Raiders head coaching job, but they haven't formally reached out to Flores just yet. I think they will eventually next week, but he does only have 3 interviews lined up so far, 2 of them being for a head coaching position and 1 of them being for the defensive coordinator position. Now, I fully expect the Dallas Cowboys to get involved in this. Mike Florio put a report about a month ago that the Cowboys are going to heavily pursue Brian Flores this offseason cycle, but the 2 head coaching interviews are the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Makes a lot of sense. Both these teams, they want that Belichickian style of head coach where it's a no-nonsense, like set the culture, kind of continue the culture that Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh both instilled in Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and Flores would hit that bill. So he has 3 interviews lined up, but Kevin O'Connell sounds pretty confident that he'll be able to keep Flores in Minnesota. This is what KOC had to say during his end-of-the-season presser, saying, "We were very much being aggressive to try to get something done with him, but at the same time, want to be respectful and make sure he can go through whatever process. But based upon my conversations, I have a lot of confidence we're going to be able to get something done with him as our defensive coordinator." Now, first off, I hope you're right, Kevin, because you need him. This Vikings team this past season, they would not have been a good football team if Flores was not the defensive coordinator, because I think you can almost guarantee yourself heading the next season, this defense will be top 5, if not for sure top 10 with Flores at DC. But if you don't have Brian Flores, I got a lot of question marks on how good this defense is, because I just don't think the personnel level is up there with like the Houston Texans, the Denver Broncos, some of these better defenses in the league. I just don't think they have the talent compared to those teams. And I think things could get ugly without Flores. Like, Kevin O'Connell's offense, it's not like they've been lighting the world on fire over the last couple of seasons. Now, yes, with Sam Darnold, when he had a great year, when the Vikings, were 14-2 heading into that last game against the Detroit Lions, that offense was, about top 10-ish in the NFL, but that defense was top 3 in the league this past season. And, even this past year, this Vikings defense, in a year where they were on the field a whole lot, the Vikings ran the 3rd least amount of plays offensively in the entire NFL, so they're on the field a whole bunch. But Flores' defense lit it up. I mean, top 7 in points per game, top 3 in yards per game, yards per play, they were 3rd, third down percentage, top 5, red zone scoring, top 2. Now, yes, they were a little susceptible to the run. Now, I think a lot of that was just that teams were scared to throw the ball against Flores' defense, hence why they're top 2 in passing yards per game. And takeaways per game, I think that's a little fluky, because considering most of the Vikings' takeaways came against 2 teams. I mean, you have 5 against the Bengals and 6 against the Detroit Lions. I mean, you remove those 2 games. I mean, they were pretty much a bottom defense in the league in terms of taking the football away. And, I'm not trying to get a hot take out here or be hyperbolic by saying this, but if the Vikings, for whatever reason, didn't have Flores this past season, they would have won 5 games. Like, you can just go back and just start pinpointing a bunch of games that they probably would have lost. Like the New York Giants game, they probably would have lost. Even the Commanders game that they won 31-0. I could easily see the Vikings losing that one if they didn't have Flores dominating that one. The Detroit Lions game, they would have for sure lost. And I think there was a bunch of other opportunities that the Vikings would have lost in those matchups if Flores wasn't the DC. I think he is the best defensive play caller in the league. I think his scheme is the best currently in the NFL because you think about all these younger quarterbacks in the NFL. I think from just a pure talent perspective, this is the most talented we have ever seen quarterbacks in terms of just mobility, arm strength, arm angles, all of that. But the intellectual side of the game, the processing side of the quarterback play, which Brian Flores, his defense challenges these guys, where you have to, one, diagnose what you think the Vikings are on pre-snap, then the ball snapped and guys are going all over the football field. You got to diagnose it post-snap, and it just challenges these quarterbacks from a processing side that really no other defense in the NFL does. And I just think the Vikings are in a tough spot right now because if they do lose Flores, like one, that's going to put the seat for Kevin O'Connell scorching hot. So we'll see how this plays out. I would probably be shocked if Flores is back as the defensive coordinator, which is a little unfortunate. But you guys let me know. If Brian Flores does end up leaving, who is your top Brian Flores replacement? Drop that name down below in the comments section. Curious to see what you guys got to say. There's a bunch of different choices, some internal guys, some external guys. So you guys let me know down below in the comments section. Now, I do want to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor before we dive into those Brian Flores replacements, and that is Factor Meals. Now, if you guys head to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50off and plug in promo code VikingsChat50off, we'll hook you guys up with 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Now, the new year is here, which means you guys probably got some big goals. And if you guys don't have time to cook, well, Factor makes it easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs so you can eat well without all the shopping or cooking. Now, I love Factor because they have no refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, and no refined seed oils. They have a ton of different great options, like the blackened salmon's delicious. The Texas cheddar burger is really good, too. They have over 100 rotating weekly meals, and these options include high protein, calorie smart, GLP-1 support, and ready-to-eat salads. So hit that link in the comment section and description of today's show, and head on over to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50off and use promo code VikingsChat50off to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. This offer is only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. All right, let's talk about some replacements here for Brian Flores. And I think the most likely option is the guy that's already in the building, and that's current defensive pass game coordinator, Daronte Jones. Now, Flores has been raving about this guy. Anytime he's on the podium this past season, he's talking about Daronte Jones. He's the guy that is deploying the post-snap coverages for the Vikings every single week. He's the one making those adjustments team to team. And, he has had a lot of success in the past. He started off in 2016 and that 2017 season with the Dolphins as their assistant defensive back coach. Then he got an upgrade with the Cincinnati Bengals, becoming their cornerback coach. And then he was with the Vikings back in 2020 as their DBs coach. And then same thing can be said in 2022. And then even this past year, he was the defensive pass game coordinator since 2023 with the Vikes. And, the Vikings pass defense, they've been fantastic over the last 3 seasons with Flores and Daronte Jones calling the shots. 2023, in terms of EPA, they were 1.7%. That was 10th in the NFL. Pretty solid, but then they took a huge jump in 2024 to the best in the National Football League at negative 12.8%. And then this past year, still really solid, 3rd in the NFL at negative 16.3%. So if I had to call my shot on who would get that upgrade, unless Flores brings him with him wherever he could go as the next head coach, it would be Daronte Jones, no doubt about it. But number 2 here, we're going to go with the head coach that was just fired. Kind of fits the bill of Flores when he was brought in to the Minnesota Vikings, and that is Raheem Morris. Now, I will say, if the Vikings end up not going with the internal option of Daronte Jones, I think Raheem Morris is the most likely choice here because Raheem and Kevin O'Connell, they already have that relationship as they were both with the Los Angeles Rams when they won the Super Bowl back in 2021. KOC was the offensive coordinator. Raheem was the defensive coordinator. And just think about that coaching staff that the Rams had when they won the Super Bowl. I mean, Sean McVay calling the shots. You had Raheem Morris. Then you also had KOC as the offensive coordinator. That was one of the best coaching staffs we have ever seen over the last decade in the National Football League. So if it's not Daronte Jones, watch out for Raheem Morris. I think he's a very likely candidate if Brian Flores does end up leaving here during this offseason cycle. And this past season with the Atlanta Falcons, even though it was probably chalked up as a disappointment for most Falcons fans, going 8-9 back-to-back years, Raheem was eventually let go, but his defense played good football. Points per game, 19th in the league, nothing to really write home about. You guys see the numbers up on screen. Now, I will say with Raheem Morris, I don't necessarily think this would be a complete home run hire for the Vikings. Like, I would be very happy about it. It's not one of those things where I would just be like, oh, you know what, the Vikings will have no issues now at the defensive coordinator spot, even though they lost Flores. Like, even if they lose Flores and they promote Daronte Jones, or they go out there and get a Raheem Morris, like the fall off we will see from Flo to Raheem will be extreme. Now, the one guy who I do really like, and I think would just add a different wrinkle for the Minnesota Vikings, where it may not look like the Flores defense, but it would still be effective, is the Jim Schwartz defense. Now, I'm a massive Jim Schwartz fan. This guy's a football sicko. Everything you hear about Jim Schwartz is just A-plus stuff. But I do fully expect the Browns to try to keep him, and it's probably likely he returns to Cleveland as the DC, no matter who they hire as the head coach. There are reports coming out that they're telling these head coaches where it's like, hey, even though you may want to bring in your own staff, we're going to keep Jim Schwartz as DC. And could you imagine if a guy, Grant Udinsky, gets a head coaching nod and Jim Schwartz is the DC? That'd be nasty stuff. But the Browns, even though in a disastrous season, similar to Flores and the Vikings, hey, they had a great year on that side of the football. 4th in yards per play, a great third down defense, great at it against the pass. I mean, when you have Myles Garrett, it obviously helps out a lot, but it's not like the Browns got elite talent on that side of the ball. So Jim Schwartz would be number 3 for me. And then number 4, another head coach that was recently fired, Jonathan Gannon. Now, I'm not saying Jonathan Gannon would be a disastrous hire for the Vikings, because I still think he's a great defensive mind. I mean, he was great with the Philadelphia Eagles when they went on that Super Bowl run where they had Gannon, Shane Steichen, Nick Sirianni. Like, that was a very, very good coaching staff. And, he's got a lot of experience. He's also got time in Minnesota. Like, he was the Vikings assistant DB's coach back from 2014 to 2017. Went to the Colts, was their DB's coach in 2018 to 2020. Then he got that promotion with the Philadelphia Eagles, calling plays there. In the year they ended up making the Super Bowl. And he obviously was the Cardinals head coach for the last 3 seasons. Did not work out as a head coach. I just still think about that one clip of him talking to the one Cardinals defender. He's going, pew, 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 pew. It was just a bad start for Jonathan Gannon, but he wouldn't be a terrible option. Now, here's a guy that would be a polarizing choice, and this would be a high-risk, high-reward. It would be Al Harris. Now, Al Harris, he spent some time with the Dallas Cowboys when guys like Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland, they had career years. Every single place Al Harris goes, their DBs have a fantastic season. And right now he is currently the Bears DBs coach. We're seeing guys like Nashawn Wright have a high interception season. Even though the Bears DBs, like, Jalen Johnson doesn't look like, his prime self where he was one of the better corners in the league, but they're still playing great football. He was the Cowboys assistant coach in 2024. He was their DBs coach from 2020 to 2023. He was actually the FAU defensive assistant for a year back in 2019. So I think this would be an unlikely choice for the Minnesota Vikings, but just still another name to keep your eyes out on. Now, if you guys made it to the end of today's show, appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Hopefully the Vikes are able to keep Flores, but as the days go on and we get more and more reports out there, it's looking likely like he'll probably be out the door. But if you guys made it to the end, hit me the skull down below in the comment section. We'll get on out of here, as always.